All right. Well, in regards to this Canelo Alvarez versus Danny Jacobs fight that's going to take place on May 4th, a lot of the big story headlines in the news is about this rehydration clause that apparently Golden Boy Promotions, Canelo's promoter, had implemented in this fight and put that stipulation in the contract. Now, as everyone knows, the IBF already does have a second day weigh in for their champions, and the champions can't weigh more than 10 pounds in the morning of the fight. Now, obviously, they have time to put on more weight after that morning weigh in, leading up into the day, the night of the fight, which these fighters still can take advantage. But at the end of the day, having to get up early the next day, usually the second day weigh-ins around 9 in the morning, and having to, you know, get on the scale for that second day weigh-in, it's kind of a disruptive thing. I mean, obviously, going into the day of the fight, you want to get as much rest as you can as a fighter, and the night of the fight, you want to be able to eat as much as you want, not have to worry about putting on 12 pounds, 13 pounds, because you have to be that, no more than that 10 pounds. So any pound over that, you're going to have a problem and you can get stripped by the IBF. But the IBF also has a rule that most people know about that if it's a unification bout, then that stipulation is waived and fighter doesn't have to weigh in for a second day weigh in the day of the fight. And he can rehydrate to as much as he wants. Now, Golden Boy has circumvented that policy, and they still wanted that second day weigh in and that rehydration clause for this Jacob fight. Now, I want to give a shout out to Dante's Boxing Nation because I watched a video that he made yesterday about this whole situation and how he feels that the Alvarez team is looking to gain an advantage. And it seems as though that may be the case here. But I also want to point to an article that he referenced and his video. It's from fightsaga.com and it's titled Canelo Alvarez Weight Gain Bully Uses Egregious Tactics to Bulldoze Foes. And this is very interesting because it references a lot of Canelo's past fights. And we all know Canelo has had a history of fighting smaller men. He fought Josecito Lopez. Um, he fought Amir Khan. Even when he won the title, he fought a Matthew Hatton at a catch weight of 150. I think it was of 150, and Matthew Hatton's really a 147 pounder. So there's a history of Alvarez fighting smaller men. Miguel Cotto, and let's take a look at some of these quotes in this article, and it's very interesting because it references the Miguel Cotto fight, and Freddie Roach, Miguel Cotto's trainer, said that he estimated Alvarez had packed on 30 pounds since the weigh-in, thereby rehydrating to a hypothetical 185 pounds. Now, in fairness, that's just Freddie Roach's guess or estimation. It's not really confirmed. But let's go to a quote that Alvarez said that is very telling here. He says, people can say whatever they want. I'm going to go up. Whatever weight makes me comfortable. If I go up to 180, 190, it doesn't matter. It's my problem and it's my prerogative. As reported by Boxing Scene, unabashed Alvarez told ESPN Deportes, I climb into the ring at whatever weight that's going to give me the win, whether it's 180 or 190. If I think it's the appropriate weight for me on the day of the fight, that's what I'm going to do. So basically, there's two quotes from two different websites that he gave interviews to. So he's talking about going up to 180 or 190 pounds for fights. So that's kind of telling there. And let's look at this other quote here where Khan had said, even when I was hitting him, I could see he wasn't moving or he wasn't hurt. I jumped up too high. I didn't expect Canelo to be that big. When a natural 154 pounder is coming in at a weight that verges on cruiserweight territory to fight a blown up former junior welterweight, the integrity of the sport is stretched to levels of absurdity. It's another quote in here. So Khan was basically saying that Alvarez was gigantic, and he was up to a cruiserweight the day of their fight. So these are all quotes from Canelo. They're quotes from his opponents. Let me see. So, okay. Here's another quote from Khan. I probably walked into the ring at 161, 162 pounds. I tried to eat and put more weight on, but for some reason I just couldn't. Canelo must have been around 180 pounds. He's a big dude. Okay. So it's quite obvious that Alvarez and Dante's Boxing Nation pointed this out in his video. So I'm not going to just parrot what he said, but I'm going to kind of piggyback off of it. This is a guy that has had a history of, fighting smaller guys and really exploiting the weight bully system in the sport of boxing. And fighters weigh in the day before the fight, usually midday, around 2 or 3 o'clock. So they basically have roughly a full day and a half, roughly 18 hours to rehydrate. And this second day weigh-in, as I mentioned, it still does not prevent the fighter from putting on additional weight after the second day weigh-in, after 9 o'clock in the morning. But again, you have to get up early in the morning. It disrupts your rest, and it kind of, is an irritant. It throws a monkey wrench in to just being able to sleep in and not have to really worry about how much you eat the night before, not really have to have an extra step basically to the training process and the rehydration process. But Canelo has had a history of exploiting the system, as I said. And even when he was fighting at 154 pounds, it was rumored that he was rehydrating to 172 pounds. And I think it's not even a rumor, because when you looked at the second day weigh-in for Alvarez versus Austin Trout, he weighed 172 pounds the night of the fight. And that's when he fought at 154. So imagine fighting at 160, how much he's rehydrating to. And this is a guy, as Dante mentioned in his video, just recently fought at 168 pounds and has even mentioned going up to 175 to challenge Kovalev. So is Canelo Alvarez really the smaller man in this fight? He's definitely the shorter man. But as we've watched Canelo Alvarez transform into this body that he has now over the years, he's getting bigger and bigger, it seems, with every fight. He's more muscular with every fight. He's very stocky, and he's a very, muscularly dense person. So Jacobs is definitely taller, and he's athletic, and he's not by no means a small middleweight, but Alvarez himself does hold a lot of muscle mass. He's got a wide back and shoulders. He's got big legs. He's thick. He's a solid, stocky 5'7", 5'8" man. And I suspect that he walks around at pretty much close to the same weight as Daniel Jacobs, because Daniel Jacobs is a very lean guy. He's tall and he's lean. Okay, he's not a muscle-bound guy, but he's definitely toned, and he's definitely got a lot of lean mass on him. But Alvarez, is lean as well, but he's thick. He's very thick and he's dense. Okay, so my question is this really going to be an advantage for him? Because arguably these guys are going to probably walk into the ring the same weight. I don't think, like, so much was talked about on how big Jacobs was against Golovkin, but to me, he looked to be about 180 pounds the night of the fight. I don't think people are saying, oh, he got up to 190. I don't think he got that big. I would guess tops 180, possibly the high 70s, 177, 178, which is pretty much the same weight as Canelo walks into the ring at when he fights at middleweight. This is a guy, as I mentioned, who got up to 172 pounds when he fought at junior middleweight, which was a weight class below middleweight. And this is a guy, as I mentioned, has fought in 168 his last fight. So why does he even need this rehydration clause? Why? And is it really going to be an advantage for him? Because now he has to get up early in the morning, the day of the fight, and he's going to lose rest. And it's more of a irritant and deterrent for him as well, having to do this the next day of the fight. So was this rehydration clause really needed? And did they make a mistake by asking for it themselves, because it could turn around to hurt them too? It's not really, in my opinion, going to help them, because as I said, in my opinion, these guys are roughly the same size in terms of weight. So you could look at a guy and he can be shorter than his opponent, but that doesn't necessarily mean he's the smaller man in terms of mass. Now I'm going to put a link to Dante's Boxing Nation's video in here, and I'm also going to put a link to this article that Fight Saga had written with the actual quotes from Boxing Scene and the actual quotes from other articles in here that Canelo Alvarez and Amir Khan had made, and Freddie Roach's quotes as well. So this isn't stuff that I'm just speculating on. This is stuff that actually came out of the fighter's mouth. So if you have a guy that's saying, hey, why would he just randomly throw out the numbers 180, 190? If I rehydrate to 180, 190, that's my prerogative. I'm going to do whatever it takes. So you're going to have that second day weigh-in. You can't weigh in at 170 pounds, more than 170 pounds. So then what happens is now you're going to put on more weight leading up to the morning weigh-in to the night of the fight. So if they put on an extra 10 pounds the day of the fight, starting at 9 o'clock, then they could be sluggish as well. You're better off being able to eat as much as you want the night before, sleep as long as you want, and get some rest. And that way you can put on the weight more gradually, instead of having to have that period where you have to stop and just weigh yourself the night of the fight. Say, hey, make sure that I don't weigh more than 170 pounds. And then you're going to try and within that short window, the day of the fight to up into the night of the fight, you're going to try to put on more weight. I don't think that's beneficial to either fighter, to be perfectly honest with you. So again, is Canelo Alvarez and his team shooting themselves in the foot? That's a great question. And I'm curious to see what you guys think in the chat, because it's very ironic and somewhat contradictory that a fighter who's notorious for exploiting the weight bully system, and who's probably one of the biggest users of the weight bully system in the sport today, is concerned about another fighter being the weight bully in their fight. So that's very, very, very ironic, and it's very hypocritical in my opinion. All right, so let me open up the chat here. Let me see what you guys think. See if we can have a discussion here, talk about your opinions. If you guys have any questions or comments, I can definitely respond to them here. All right, let's see. All right, let's go down. Corey Lee Boxing, what's up, baby? Alan Hope, Beeb, you the man. Thank you. Do you think Canelo beats Kovalev? Yeah, I actually think he can beat Kovalev. I think he does, because Kovalev is not a great inside fighter, and Canelo really showed me a wrinkle to his game in that Golovkin fight. I thought he fought beautifully on the inside in that fight and went to the body very well in that fight. Let's not get it twisted, Beeb. Jacobs needs a knockdown or a convincing performance to get the win. No, he doesn't even need a convincing performance to get the win. He needs a knockout. He needs a clean knockout. He's not getting it. This fight is remotely close. Jacobs is not winning. If he can't, I thought he beat Golovkin, and that fight was definitely competitive and close. And if he can't get a decision against Golovkin, if the fight's close, he's definitely not getting a decision against Canelo if the fight's close. If Jacobs is coy and reserved like he was with G, no matter how much he rehydrates, he will not win. I agree. Beeb, great job for giving us an early show. Don't worry, Beeb. Canelo will knock Jacobs out, so there won't be any controversy. That's from Emmanuel Morano. All right, Felix the Cat. Jacobs needs to come forward and take center ground. Optics will be all important in this fight. I think Jacobs will show too much respect for Canelo. That says Felix the Cat. Jacobs said he can get as big as 190, but the biggest he has gotten in the fight was 182 against GGG. Okay. I heard him say that he was 176 the night of the fight against Golovkin, but I don't know. I could be wrong. I'm sure there's going to be different conflicting statements made. All right. Michael Cooper says the only way Jacobs wins is a knockout. Very little chance he wins a decision, even if he wins 8 rounds. Same situation as GGG. That's the key negative to this fight. Felix the Cat says, this is mind games on Canelo team, Beebs. Don't overanalyze. I don't really think I'm overanalyzing. I think I made some good points. I'm taking actual quotes of a fighter saying that he can get up to 180, 190 if he wants to. So I'm just, looking at the empirical data, which is what's been put in front of me, and I'm commenting on it. I'm not really overanalyzing anything, with all due respect. All right, Emmanuel Moreno, I agree with Felix. Well, I disagree with both of these. How do you think Canelo versus Jacobs will play out? Well, if you watched, Jacobs versus Golovkin, what I noticed was when the fight was in the center of the ring and Jacobs was able to create space, he definitely won the battle from the outside. But the closer Golovkin got, if you notice, when he got close, he landed that right hand that knocked Jacobs down. That was in the mid-range area. That was, up close. So when the distance was shortened, that's when Golovkin had his success. As the fight wore on, I thought Jacobs did a good job of turning Golovkin and constantly holding Golovkin, and he actually leaned on him and pushed him back and walked him back a little bit to try to tire him out. So he did a great job of taking the inside game away from Golovkin and utilizing, his advantages from the outside. But with all that being said, Golovkin still had his moments, and he still was able at points in the fight, earlier in the fight, particularly in the first half, of getting inside and doing a little bit of damage. But Jacobs also, I thought, did a good job of taking the play away from him. And as the fight wore on in the second half, I thought Jacobs started controlling and dictating how the fight was going to be fought, and he was establishing his range better in the second half of the fight. Now, as I said, Canelo, I thought in points in the second Golovkin fight actually outfought him on the inside and actually pushed him back a little bit. But then Golovkin, I thought, did well adjusting, and he was using his jab, and he actually was out jabbing Canelo, and he was hitting him with a lot of jabs on the way in as the fight wore on too. So he actually fought from the outside more so in the second fight as opposed to coming forward and trying to get up close against Canelo. But I think Golovkin won both fights against Canelo, but that second fight was razor close and really could have gone either way. And I don't have an argument or a problem with Canelo getting that second fight. But I do like what he did in terms of the body work and closing the gap. And at this stage of his career, he's probably quicker than Golovkin, and he can get in close faster. And he's a little bit better than Golovkin at throwing feints, so he can feint his way in as well. So I don't think Canelo is going to have a particularly hard time getting inside on Jacobs per se for the whole fight. I think he'll find a way to get inside. And I think once he gets inside, I think Jacobs will have a hard time holding him and containing him, because the difference between Canelo and Golovkin is Canelo has a lot of good upper body movement. He bends and dips and ducks at the waist. So once he gets inside, he'll be able to maneuver himself out of the clinches and be elusive enough to not allow Jacobs to freeze him up on the inside because of the upper body movement, because of him being able to, slip and slide and duck and dip and duck on the inside. And I think he's a more fluid combination puncher than Golovkin as well. So once he gets his hands moving up close on the inside, I think he'll be able to put shots together better than Golovkin did against Jacobs. So I think the big telling point in this fight, or the big advantage Canelo has in this fight, is because he's shorter, he can become a compact target on the inside. He can get under a lot of Jacobs' shots on the inside. And because he's elusive with his movement, upper body wise on the inside, I think he'll be able to do some good work on the inside. And once he opens up that body attack, I think that'll create opportunities for him to go to shoot that left hook upstairs, shorten it up on the inside, which he does very well. So I think he'll have a good time on the inside, and I think he'll exploit Jacobs's probably disadvantages up close. I don't think Jacobs is a horrible fighter inside, but definitely he's more successful creating space. So I think Canelo will have an advantage on the inside, and I think he'll try to take this fight to the inside, and I think he'll have some success on the inside. I think he'll be successful at trying to take this fight on the inside. I think once he gets in there, I think that's going to be the game changer in this fight. I think the body work on the inside and just the overall um, inside game of Canelo will exploit Jacobs's weaknesses. I think that's one advantage he has in this fight, and I think both guys can crack, but I think Canelo can generate more power up close than Danny Jacobs does. I think Danny Jacobs needs to have that space and really turn that right hand over and really get leverage on those punches. I think if Canelo gets up close, he could smother Jacobs's power, and I think if he dictates where this fight is going to be fought, and he's successful at fighting this fight on the inside, I think he'll be at more of an advantage, and his shots will be more effective up close than Danny Jacobs's punches. So I still favor Canelo in this fight because I think he'll be able to impose his will on Jacobs on the inside and be more successful on the inside. I don't think he'll allow Jacobs to control the range as much as he'd like in this fight. So that's just my opinion, because he'll be in there with a younger, fresher fighter than he was when he fought Golovkin. And I actually think Derevyanchenko won that fight against Jacobs in Jacobs' last fight. I thought he really outworked Jacobs up close as well too. And you saw the difference when Derevyanchenko was able to feint his way inside, and he was able to bob and weave his way inside and work behind the jab and get up close. He did some great work with the body shots and the short uppercuts on the inside as well, and the short hooks on the inside as well. So I think that's the big difference in this fight is Canelo's ability to fight up close. I think he does it much better than Jacobs, and I think that's where the significant advantages lie in this fight. So I think that he'll be able to outwork Jacobs on the inside in this fight, and I think you'll see a more aggressive, a more active Canelo in this fight than we've seen in previous fights. And I thought he actually did a great job putting the pressure on Canelo in the last fight, and he upped his work rate. And here's another thing that I've noticed about Canelo too is he's kind of more relaxed and he's more poised in fights now. So he's not, getting a little bit overzealous like he was early in his career, because we've noticed in the second half of a lot of his fights early in his career, he kind of faded. He did not fade at all in these past two Golovkin fights. I thought he fought, like I said, a very poised, relaxed, confident type fight. And because he was able to kind of control his adrenaline and maintain the pace and pick and choose his spots well, and not kind of overshoot his load in those past two fights, I think that it enabled him to finish both fights very strongly. So that's what I like the maturity of Canelo Alvarez. Canelo Alvarez has gotten better as a fighter. Now, obviously, with all the controversy that lies in his fights, there's always seems to be crazy scorecards in his fights, and when the fights are close, for some reason the judges have them wide. But with all that being said, I still can't take away from the fact that Canelo is really growing into being an outstanding elite fighter, and he's shown improvements as time has gone on. And not only that, as I said, he's getting bigger, faster, and stronger as fights go on. And you guys can make what you want of that. I'm not going to, make any accusations, but we all know what's up. So with all that being said, I think Canelo should win this fight legitimately. But it's just a shame that we have to say that if Jacobs does not knock Canelo out, that he's not going to get the victory. I mean, we seem to be saying that in all of Canelo's fights. So even though I think Canelo will win this fight legitimately, and I think he has some good advantages in this fight that he could use against Jacobs, but if Jacobs does, really come to fight, and he proves me wrong, and is able to nullify Canelo on the inside, and he ends up, fighting a very effective fight himself, and the rounds are close, but he may be nicking the rounds. He's not going to get the rounds. We know that, and that's a shame. That's a travesty. So Jacobs could fight the fight of his life, just like he fought against Golovkin, which I thought he won that Golovkin fight, and still not get credit for it. So even though I think Canelo will win legitimately, even if he doesn't win legitimately, and the fight could go either way, it's not gonna go Jacobs' way. It's gonna go Canelo's way. If this fight is razor close, Jacobs will not get the decision. So there is a possibility of this fight being a closely, hotly contested fight, and it could end up being razor close at the end. But we all know there's going to be a 118, a 1 fucking 10 scorecard in there from one of the judges on Canelo's side. We already know that. It's built in. So, with that being said, it's just a shame that, we have to be saying these things before every single Canelo Alvarez fight. But, props to Jacobs. I mean, he's taken this tough fight. Props to Canelo. He's taken this tough fight. They're both champions. I'm sure they had other avenues, but obviously this is the biggest money fight out there for Jacobs. But props to Canelo, because there was other avenues that he could have taken. He didn't have to fight Jacobs. But again, this rehydration clause, it's kind of a head scratcher. It's not a good look, because it does show that Team Canelo is concerned about the size of Jacobs. So whenever you put stipulations like rehydration clauses, or you're concerned about gloves, and you're concerned about ringside, to me, that tells you that you're kind of giving the psychological edge to your opponent, because you're saying that you need certain things to be in your favor for you to be successful. Now, the flip side of that is, okay, we're the A side. Of course, we're going to dictate the terms, and we're going to give ourselves every advantage, and we're going to try and get in the other team's head. We're going to try and take away things to try to make them second guess themselves. I get that, but there's two sides to the coin here. You're already admitting that Jacobs is the bigger man. You're already admitting that his size could be a problem for you. So you're already showing your hand right there. So that actually can give Jacobs confidence in this fight, knowing that possibly you and your team are concerned about his size. But as I said, I think weight-wise, these guys are roughly the same size. They probably walk around at about 185 pounds when they're not training, both of them. And I think Canelo Alvarez is growing into, his man strength now. And I think the older he gets, the bigger he's going to get. And I would not be surprised if he ends up going to light heavyweight. You can sit there and say, well, he's only 5'8", but look at guys like Montel Griffin. He was 5'7". There's been shorter light heavyweights out there, Vinny Pazienza, 5'7", he fought at light heavyweight a few times. Roberto Duran, 5'7", although they're not real light heavyweights, but these guys fought at 168 as their career went on, and they're not tall guys either, So there have been some short, stocky fighters out there that have moved up to the higher weight classes. We've seen that. Mike Tyson himself was fought at heavyweight, and he was only 5'10", which is roughly an inch or two taller than Canelo. So it's not always about the height, guys. It's about how you carry the weight. It's about muscle mass. It's about bone density. It's about your frame. And Canelo Alvarez definitely is not a thin guy. He's a muscular, stocky guy, as I said. So I don't think Jacobs will be a weight bully in this fight. I think these guys will be fighting on even terms in terms of size. So definitely Jacobs has the height and reach, but Canelo can definitely take that away from him if he's able to dictate the range in which this fight is going to be fought. And if he does turn this into a phone booth war, I think he'll have a lot of advantages in that regard. All right, let's see if we can get some more information in the chat here, more questions in the chat. Khan had little success with Canelo during the early rounds. Khan had a little success with Canelo during the early rounds. Do you think Jacobs will be successful on the outside, fighting tall? Well, Khan was very quick on his feet, and he has a different style than Jacobs. Jacobs moves, but he doesn't move as much as Khan. Jacobs uses a lot of subtle movement. He inches his way backward, and he's constantly turning. He uses pivots a lot, where Khan uses lateral movement. He doesn't plant himself and pivot out of the way. He actually uses his legs to actually move side to side, and he uses a lot more movement than Jacobs, and he flurries a lot more. He'll throw. He's an ambush fighter, where Jacobs likes to kind of plant himself in the center of the ring and kind of edge forward and slide forward and pivot to create space that way. So it's a different fighting style because Jacobs has a lot less movement, and Jacobs doesn't throw as many flurries as Khan. Jacobs tends to set up shots, but he likes to really sit down on the shots a little bit more than Khan. So in doing that, he's not going to be as active. His output is not going to be as high as Khan's. So Khan, flurried well against Canelo, but he really couldn't sit down, and he wasn't going to take the chances that Jacobs is going to take in this fight. Jacobs will probably take some chances in this fight because he knows he's going to have to win these rounds impressively in order to get a decision here. So it's a different mindset. It's just a different style matchup. So you could be right to a point, but I don't think it'll be the same fight. I thought Khan did exceptionally well against Canelo. I actually thought he won 5 of the first 6 rounds in their fight against Canelo. I had him up, and so did Paul Malignaggi. So a lot of people had him up in that fight before he got stopped. And Canelo, does make adjustments, and he does get better as the fight wears on. So, Emmanuel Moreno said it took Canelo a little time to get adjusted to Khan speeds. That's correct. He jabbed all fight against GGG. I don't think he jabbed a lot in the Golovkin fight, but that's your opinion. GGG beat Jacobs. Jacobs won 4 of the last portion of the fight. I agree, Emmanuel. I thought he finished strong. Can't say for sure. Look at De La Hoya Trinidad. Comes a point where, hey, fairness has to prevail. Yeah, I said that in the last fight, or not the last fight, but in the second fight against Golovkin. I thought that the judges would go out of their way to kind of make a case for Golovkin because they didn't want to have the same controversy that they had in the first fight. But I was wrong in that fight. So I was thinking the same thing, that justice will prevail at at one point, Gonzalo, but didn't happen in the second Golovkin fight. So, and that's not to say that Canelo didn't deserve to get that decision. That fight legitimately could have gone either way, but it's just ironic that every close fight that Golovkin's going to get the nod. So if Jacobs gets robbed, it will affect Canelo. They'll have to call it down the middle. I don't know. We'll see. Canelo is thicker than Jacobs, possibly. Tyson only 5'10" and a half. 5'10" if he's lucky. Fighting style. Yo, what's up, B? What's going on, champ? How you doing, Bernard Goetz? How good is Jacobs' chin really? It seems kind of suspect. Well, I will say this. Jacobs did go down against Golovkin, but to his credit, he got up and he held on. Canelo definitely has a great chin. They actually showed a highlight clip of Golovkin throwing that right hand against Khan, and how Khan kind of folded up and withered to the canvas. And they also actually showed a side-by-side clip of him throwing the same punch against Canelo, and Canelo took the punch. Excuse me, showing Canelo throw the same punch against Golovkin, and Golovkin took the punch beautifully. But Golovkin threw similar punches against Canelo, and Canelo took the shot. So I think probably you'd have to argue that Canelo, who's never been down, at least to my knowledge, and Canelo's never been down, and he was in there with some pretty decent punches. Cotto's a decent puncher. Golovkin's definitely a huge puncher. And I think we'd have to argue that probably Canelo is the more durable guy. And, with this rehydration clause, will this affect Jacobs? Will it make him put on less weight the day of the fight because he has to weigh in twice? And I think, in my opinion, the big reason why, Jacobs didn't weigh in for the second day weigh in against Golovkin was, I don't think he wanted to necessarily be the weight bully in that fight. I think he wanted to be as big as possible to help him with his punch resistance too. Obviously, the rest, I agree with him. The rest does play a part into it. Being able to get that extra rest and not having to stress yourself out of having to make a second weigh in and all that. Mentally, it is more of a stress thing. But also, I think the bigger you are too, the more water your body holds, the less dehydrated you are, the less cerebral spinal fluid that your skull loses in order to cushion your brain. And I think that helps with punch resistance. So I'm curious to see how this rehydration clause will affect Jacobs' punch resistance on the night of the fight. But if you were to ask me who do I think is the more durable guy, I probably would say Canelo, given the history, because he's never been knocked down. He's never been stopped. Jacobs has been knocked down a few times in his career. He got knocked down by Sergio Mora, which was kind of a shocker, in my opinion. So I definitely give him, Canelo, the edge in durability and chin, without question. All right. So, guys, who do you think? Let me ask you guys one question in the chat. Who do you think is going to win this fight? And do you think this rehydration clause is really an advantage for Canelo? Anyone? And let me ask you this: do you guys envision any controversy in this fight with Jacobs and Canelo? Do you think we're going to be talking about any bullshit scorecards at the end of this fight? I haven't seen Canelo getting tired like he did when he fought 1 minute and a half in spurts in the late. And how did his stamina improve? Well, I think he's smarter now. I think he fights more relaxed. I think he picks and chooses his spots. I think he knows how to pace himself better in fights, and I think that came with experience. What's up, Sparks Fly? How you doing, buddy? Shout out from the UK. Okay. Is anyone picking Jacobs in this fight? And is anyone concerned about the rehydration clause? I'm just curious to see what you guys' opinions are in the chat. Anyone? Nope. All right, guys. Well, I got to head out to work. And thank you all for tuning in. Shout out to everybody in the chat. Smash that motherfucking like button. And Beeb is out for now. And probably do some more videos during the week. Oh, Sparks Fly says Canelo wins by KO. Yeah, I'm going to see, depending upon what happens, this Golovkin, his own deal seems to be closing in here. It could be announced this week. And if it is, we will probably be doing a Ringside Reporter podcast show when that is announced. Me, Eric, and Ringside Robert. So make sure you tune in. Keep tuning into the podcast every Sunday, 7 p.m. Eastern time. And again, we're going to be trying to do more podcasts. Our goal is to probably shoot for at least 2 or 3 a week. We want to really start building this channel. We're going to get the Skype going. So we want to really have some interaction with the UK guys. We hope that you UK guys will start tuning in, calling in. And we'd like to hear from you guys because you guys are great boxing fans. And we'd like to hear your input. And not only UK guys, but fans from all around the world. So we're going to get that Skype going just so we can interact with everybody, not just American fans. Thank you, Sparks Fly. Respect to you too. Thank you for your kind words. Best boxing show on the web. Awesome. Thank you, man. So Sparks Fly, salute. Bernard Goetz, salute. Gonzalo Anaya, salute. Team Batman Boxing, salute. Emmanuel Morano, salute. Trick Dolte, salute. Everybody in the chat, salute. Smash that motherfucking like button. Shout out to Blue Blood Sports. And Beeb is out. Talk to y'all soon. Catch you on the rebound, guys. Have a great day. Have a great day. And like I said, make sure you keep up with the Ringside Reporter podcast and make sure you subscribe to this channel, Ringside Reporter Live. Tell a friend to tell a friend, man, because we want to keep growing. And, the more support you give us, the more shows you're going to get. All right. Peace out. Beeb is out. Talk to y'all soon. Have a great day.